5 o'clock on the dot, so I'll go ahead and take a roll call for the record. Commissioner Cowan?
Present.
Commissioner Gowan?
Present.
Commissioner Galante?
I'm here.
Commissioner Tetro? Commissioner Munguia? Commissioner Neese? And Mayor Mendez.
I'm here.
We do have a quorum present, so we'll go ahead and read the notice. Notice of public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville teleconference open meeting pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5, Section 551.041 of the Texas Government Code. The Texas Open Meetings Act notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville will conduct a regular meeting on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020 at 5 p.m. via WebEx teleconference meeting by logging on the website. Our meeting number is 969-933-100. This notice and meeting agenda are also posted online at the City of Brownsville website on the Agenda Center. The members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting hosted the WebEx teleconference can also join us by calling in on the phone number. We have now taken roll call. We do have a quorum present. Next, we have the invocation. It'll be by Pastor Brad Burke.
Welcome back, Pastor Brad. We're glad to have you back. Hopefully you're doing better and recovered mostly.
Doing much better. I'm mostly recovered, thank God.
Great.
Okay, let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this nation that we're blessed to be a part of. And Lord, tonight we ask you for healing for our nation. Lord, we ask you to bring us together in unity. Help each of us to recognize the similarities in each other, to respect the differences, and to love each other no matter our histories. Lord God, we ask you again to bring our nation together and bring healing and unity. And Lord, for our City Commission meeting tonight, we ask you for special wisdom, direction, and revelation for our mayor and each of our commissioners. Lord, we ask you to help each of us to share your love and to do what's best for the city of Brownsville. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And now we'll have a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what's been spoken. Amen.
They don't allow you if you're not invited to the meeting.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. And I would ask that we also engage in an additional moment of silence for George Floyd and any other individual who's lost their lives for any sort of oppression and other racial and societal issues in the past. Thank you. Welcome, Commissioner Tetro.
Thank you. I had some issues logging on, but I got the right password.
Okay. Next, we have on the agenda the proclamations from Ms. Lupita Moreno.
Thank you. Is Ms. Moreno on, or her family members?
We do have some callers on the screen, Mayor, but it's not specific if it's them or not. I know that they were going to be on the call.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and proceed. If they do, if they are on, then they can jump on after I read the proclamation. This is a proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing and honoring Lupita Moreno. Whereas Lupita Moreno has graduated from the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley at the age of 75, earning a bachelor's degree in psychology with a minor in history, an endeavor worthy of high praise and recognition. And whereas this Brownsville native has displayed fierce determination to accomplish a lifelong goal, all the while becoming a role model for her family and countless community members that will follow in her footsteps. And whereas Lupita is no stranger to hard work, having served the Brownsville community as a nurse for 50 years. She began her career at Mercy Hospital in 1966 as an LVN after graduating from the Canales School of Vocational Nursing. Moreno went on to earn her associate's degree in nursing at Texas Southmost College in 1980 and became a registered nurse, working at Brownsville Medical Center, Valley Regional Medical Center, and as a traveling nurse at Laredo Medical Hospital, and lastly at South Texas Rehabilitation Hospital. Her service included work as a triage nurse at the Brownsville Community Health Center and as a clinical nursing instructor at the University of Texas Brownsville for 2 years. And whereas Lupita has 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren, and is also a devoted parishioner at Holy Family Church, her indomitable spirit and faith moved her to volunteer with Valley Interfaith and be active in 2 ministries, the Sacred Heart Society and the Divine Mercy Ministry. And it was the Sisters of Mercy, Moreno's professors and mentors, who taught her to be a spiritual nurse and to see Jesus in all her patients. This life lesson has stayed in her heart ever since. And whereas a higher education degree is a valuable asset and benefits families, businesses, and a variety of organizations in our region. And because Lupita Moreno has exemplified the importance of education, no matter what your situation in life may be. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the Charter of said city, and on behalf of all our citizens, do hereby recognize and honor Lupita Moreno and encourage the residents of Brownsville to celebrate her contributions to our community. Done on this 2nd day of June, 2020. Congratulations, Lupita. It's an amazing accomplishment to graduate at 75. That shows not only determination, but resilience and a quality that so many Brownsville residents have, but you are an exemplary example of resilience, tenacity, and the value of education. Thank you so much. You're an inspiration to so many of us.
Hi, good evening, Mayor.
Yes.
Hi, Richard Sanchez here from the university.
Hey, Richard. Welcome.
I know that Mrs. Moreno is on the other line. She's online and heard the presentation. She's just having difficulty with her audio
Okay.
to pipe in. Anyway, very appreciative, as well we are. It's a great story and a wonderful accomplishment by someone I know that the city of Brownsville is very proud of. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we appreciate her hard work and dedication. It really is an inspiration. And I hope that more people learn about her and her story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proclamation is for Brownsville Fashion Week. Mr. Nolan Navarro, aka known as Fish.
Oh, good. I see you. Okay. Well, I have the pleasure of reading this proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, recognizing Brownsville Fashion Week. Whereas the 2nd annual Brownsville Fashion Week was celebrated from Sunday, May 24th, 2020 to Saturday, May 30th, 2020, and came together within a month because the COVID-19 pandemic affected the original plans to have a total of 24 unique locations throughout the city of Brownsville. Whereas this year's Brownsville Fashion Week evolved as a result of the pandemic to observe social distancing, but at the same time provide a shift in creative energy to entertain and inspire by producing 5 online runway shows, 2 online parties, and 6 online workshops exploring topics such as breaking into the industry, photographing, editorials, fashion sustainability, fashion entrepreneurship, and makeup. And whereas a team of Victor Hugo Jaramillo, Miguel Joy, Brianna Lozano, Alex Villarreal, and Nolan Navarro, aka Fish, came together to put on the week-long festival and have vowed to continue creating and promoting fashion opportunities in Brownsville so that creative types and interested parties have a safe and supportive environment to experiment and envision their fashion fantasies. And whereas a group of independent organizers, volunteers, designers, stylists, models, and the city of Brownsville aims to empower local designers and goes beyond conservative, heteronormative culture by prioritizing designers and artists who come from disadvantaged households and marginalized communities. And whereas fashion is a nascent industry in the city of Brownsville, but nonetheless much appreciated and much needed because the artistic beauty it adds to the community and the inspiration it provides to artists across different mediums, including but not limited to visual art, music, theater, and dance. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the State of said city, and on behalf of all our citizens, do hereby encourage the residents of Brownsville to recognize Brownsville Fashion Week, done on this day, the June 2020. Thanks for doing all this in such short notice, Young.
Thank you guys so much for presenting me with this wonderful award opportunity and proclamation for Brownsville Fashion Week. I've worked really hard for this, and I've produced a total of 90 fashion shows in Brownsville alone since the age of 15, and Brownsville Fashion Week is gonna be my baby from now on. So from here on till I decide that Brownsville Fashion Week is gonna be over, which probably till the day I die. It's going to be continuing in the month of May every year, and I'm just so excited to present this with the City of Brownsville. Thank you guys so much, and thank you so much to the Commission for providing the help this year and for always checking up on us to making sure that we were running everything on schedule, doing everything in a book, and just getting through with this whole Corona. So I really appreciate your time and your effort shown into this year's Brownsville Fashion Week, and I hope next year just gets bigger and better, and that I'm able to evolve and involve everybody in the city. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Fish. Great job. And hopefully next year we don't have to watch it on computers.
Yeah, hopefully next year it'll be all over Brownsville. So
yeah, great job. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation. First, we have presentation by Dr. McCormick at UT School of Public Health on COVID-19 dashboard.
Dr. McCormick, you're up. If you can unmute yourself, please. We can't hear you.
Let's try this.
Here you go.
Mi nombre es Genaro.
Hear me now?
Yo le mandé un correo electrónico.
Hear me now?
Tell them there's something that needs to be muted.
I swear it's
Can you
not
hear me now?
Mitch.
Yes, Dr. McCormick, we can hear you.
Go ahead, Joe.
This is strange.
Mayor, what I can do is
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can you hear us, Joe?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I had to switch to a different system. My other one wasn't working. So my apologies. Can you see my screen? Let's be sure that. Are you?
We can see you and we can hear you, but we don't see any presentation loaded. Griselda, was it something that was preloaded, or what are we doing?
No, sir, it wasn't sent to us.
James?
So we see a title page, presentation by Dr. McCormick in UT School of Public Health on COVID dashboard. Is that your first page?
No, my slide is, let me see. Let me go back to sharing screen, just a sec. And let's see if I can get my screen share to work.
Dr. McCormick, in the middle of the floating taskbar on the bottom. There you go, sir.
think you got it. You got it now? We are seeing a black screen. If you can move your presentation into that window, sir. I'm seeing my own screen, but I don't. Let's see. Let's stop here and try another one. I see Commissioner Tetreault, so there's something that should be working.
Well, what a wonderful thing to see.
Now can you see me?
Yes.
We got it.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so this is a brief presentation to update you on the progress that's been made with the COVID-19 collaboration between UT School of Public Health, and I mean that writ large. It means the Brownsville campus as well as the campus in Houston, because we have lots of people working on this. Many of you have probably visited our campus, but if you haven't, there's a beautiful picture of it, and we invite you, when it's possible, to come and visit us. Now, this is a huge team effort that we have tried to put together, that we have put together. It's working quite well. And these are a number. I hope I didn't leave out team members. It's very possible. But this, I'm not going to read all the names. I'm just trying to show you what a team effort this is, and it includes some of our faculty. Obviously includes 4 key people from Brownsville, and it includes a large number of faculty and students from both Brownsville campus and from the campus in Houston. So what we set out to do was to create a data warehouse using REDCap, which is a well-established database that was created by the National Institute of Health some years ago, and it's used quite broadly for many different kinds of studies, including clinical trials, lots of other things. And it's free, so people can use it. And so we have created our database in that, and we've provided that to our colleagues in City of Brownsville. I should mention we're also working with the county as well as with the health district up in Tyler. So we have actually 3 different programs ongoing. So one of our first jobs was to prepare data for advanced analysis. That means we had to gather the disparate sets of data from various sources in the city and put all those together and go through a whole process of data cleaning in order to prepare it for advanced analysis. Then we wanted to do, and we are doing, advanced epidemiologic analysis. I'm going to present to you a whole mouthful, but I think you'll be intrigued by the maps that it represents. It's called Bayesian Adaptive Spatiotemporal Surveillance System. And we have a team in Houston that is adept at this very highly specialized but very interesting data. And then we set out to create an interactive dashboard for timely data visualization on the COVID-19 epidemic. And I hope that, assuming our technology works, to be able to show you that dashboard. These are all things that are in progress, but we've made very good progress. And I think you'll be able to see the value of these, not only now, but for going forward in the future. Obviously, a very important component of this is to provide feedback to you and the City of Brownsville with ideas and interpretation, but also to respond to your requests. What do you want to know that we may be able to provide to you that would help with the understanding of the epidemic and with the ability to work with you as partners to help manage the epidemic, which I must say right now, Brownsville has done a great job, and I congratulate all of you for the terrific job you've done. And this also, we hope will go beyond Brownsville. This is a pretty unusual program. I've looked at the one they have going in Houston, and they don't have this kind of level that I'm going to show you of the drilling down of the data. So we want to be able to share this beyond just Brownsville, but we hope Brownsville will take some credit for this program. So let's start with that mouthful that I gave you earlier, the Bayesian Adaptive Spatiotemporal Surveillance System, or BASCO, as our young professor up in Houston, Dr. C.C. Bauer, has labeled it. So this is a program that takes the data that's been provided by Dr. Rodriguez, Michelle Jones, and Alvaro from the city of Brownsville, and Eder Hernandez in doing the screening out in the sports park. Taking all of these data, Dr. Mir Young Lee, who is at our campus in Brownsville, has brought those data in, worked with all of our colleagues at the city of Brownsville to make the data into a database that now Dr. Bauer is able to tap into in Houston and produce the kind of work that she does. So this, again, is a major effort. And if you look at the data warehouse that's been created, I'll sort of walk you through this quickly. So here's the City of Brownsville online. This is your portal. There are walk-ins who come to be screened. There's the drive-through, and there are healthcare facilities. And we're trying to get all of those data from, as you can see, different sources, but bring them all into one site. And this includes the demographic data, symptoms, and I'll show you some of the data on that, travel history, contact history, and address. And we're trying to pull all of that into a large database that we can then use to try to better understand the progress of the epidemic. We look at testing ineligible, those people who have requested testing but were not considered eligible based on the criteria, and then testing eligible, people who had symptoms. And the testing here is based, as it has been in most of the rest of the world, really, until more recently, it's been based on symptoms, people who were ill. And we have to remember that a large portion of people who get infected by this virus are asymptomatic, which of course makes it far more difficult to do anything with. I recall back in 2014 when I was happened to be on Anderson Cooper's program in CNN, and I told him that we were not going to have an epidemic of Ebola. And he asked me, well, how do I know that? I said, well, first of all, I've worked for years in West Africa, and I know the culture of the population. But secondly, Ebola can only spread when you're sick. And we have a way of detecting this and getting people quarantined quickly enough when they become ill. They don't spread until they start to actually have bleeding and some of the other symptoms. So I said, we have a public health system that can detect this early and get people isolated. And sure enough, we of course did not have. We had some cases imported. This virus is utterly different because it causes a huge number of asymptomatic infections or mildly symptomatic infections, sometimes with conditions people don't even attribute to it. And that means they're out and moving around in our population. And that is the big problem with this virus. So we need a lab test to be able to decide who is infected. And so we have negatives and positives, and we have the results, we have case reports, we have contact tracing forms, and all of these then are going into our database. As you can see, this is a big effort, lots of people involved, and we're making progress, and that's what I want to share with you. But I wanted to show you how this all is pulled together in a cartoon so you can see the process. So the data that we currently are working with are what Dr. Bauer has called a pilot data. I call it the initial data that goes from March 24th to May the 4th. This is data from the city. We had 2,882 screening requests received in that time from the city of Brownsville from 2,611 unique individuals. Some of those had traveled outside, and we have that information. 827 reported close contact with a positive person in the previous 14 days. We have we have all the information on the symptoms here. I'm not going to read all this through, but we had fever, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing. We've now expanded that, obviously. This was early on. So we've expanded that some because we've discovered, we being the editorial we across the country have discovered other symptoms that are also present. So 1,965 of those during that period were testing eligible. 757 individuals with their lab test results included 210 positive cases. And all of these had address information. So that allowed Dr. Bauer to put them on a map. We are continuing to gather all of this data, but because it comes from disparate places, there are delays in reporting. It's a messy affair, and it just takes time to be sure we get all the data and get it clean. So that's a sort of summary of the data that you're going to see now on the maps. And I'm going to try to see if I can expand these maps so that you can see them. Are you able to see the map fairly clearly now? So you can see this is the number of screening requests. And what Dr. Bauer has on the right-hand side is the counts, and the colors. The light colors that you can see are associated with low counts, and the heavier colored covers up to this heavy red one here is over 200 people that were in that particular location. So you can see these maps are the maps of the area where testing has occurred, and then we can look and see what the number of screening tests, and we can see the highest numbers right here near the sports park. That's probably not too surprising. This is the number of testing eligible people here. And you can see it fairly matches the map next to it over here. And then let's go down though and look at number of tests reported, because this is quite interesting. So again, this maps relatively with the others. You can see the number of tests reported. Again, this high number here, fair number here after an effort in some of this area to inform people about testing. And you can break this down. We can spread this out even more so that I can't probably do it on this screen, but you can. We'll make this available to you, by the way. We're not hiding this information. We just want to make sure that it's fairly clean and not it doesn't have too many problems before we. But now one of our next objectives is to get this out there on a regular basis so that you'll be able to look at it. Now, what's interesting here? Look at the map of the number of tests reported. Now, this is the number of positive tests, and look, we've got a lot of tests reported here. In this one, but not nearly as many positives. So what this provides us with is where are we testing and getting low positives, and where are we testing that are getting fairly high positives? You can see the area around the sports park, but it's also interesting here, we have a relatively low number of tests, but a higher number of positives here in this section. And so we can, I won't go into this in great detail, but again, we see a lot of tests here, but not so many positives among those tests. So this kind of gives us a way to track where are we testing, but where are the areas that we have the highest rate of positives, which means it is a relative hotspot. So this is going to be, this will be the nature currently of some of the tests, of some of the graphs and maps that Dr. Bauer is making. obviously this ended in May, and we're now expanding the data, bringing in more data to build more complete maps to catch up to the date where we are now. Now, one of the things that we can do with this technology is to overlay these areas with maps that exist from public data. For example, this is, and I'll expand this a little bit so you can see it. Whoops, sorry. So this is a map of the SES, the socioeconomic status, come from the Census Bureau data and other data that are put together to show the levels of SES index, the darkest ones being the poorer areas, the lightest ones being the wealthier areas. There's a map of mobility index, and as you may know from some of the models that have been made, the reason that for example, the University of Washington expanded their prediction of the number of deaths was because as states started to open up, they were able to track people's mobility and movement through cell phone data and other data. And that's why they expanded their prediction from around 100,000 to 140 by the end of June. And so we are able to map mobility index here in terms of people's ability to move around. And eventually we have also some data on actual movement of people. And that's going to help us also to build more robust maps and predictions. This is Urban Core Opportunity Index. That's used for potential for people to get jobs and open businesses. And this is an Immigration Cohesion and Accessibility Index. All of these have implications as social determinants of health. And we want to be able to overlay those. We haven't started doing that except to create these maps, but eventually we'll be overlaying the COVID maps with this information and trying to make gather some more understanding about the implications and the risk factors for COVID disease. Now, we are also creating an interactive dashboard for this, and I'm hoping this is going to work because it is, let's see if we get this up. And if I can show you this dashboard, and let's see if I can get it to move over here. I assume you cannot see the dashboard at the moment, but I'm hoping that this will do it. This is a live dashboard online. Are you able to see that?
No. We see the screen, Dr. McCormick, but there's no content on the screen.
Like a gray isolated page.
Let me see. I'm seeing it quite clearly, but that doesn't mean you're going to see it. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and see if I can get this to come up, because this is the dynamic dashboard that I was hoping to be able to show you. Are you able to see that at all? Sorry, we didn't have a chance to test this out beforehand. And it's always tricky trying to share a browser. I do it in Zoom, but I'm not so familiar with WebEx, and I'm not doing very well here in terms of getting our browser shared. Let's see if I can get. You still are not able to see this, I presume.
We can see it now.
You can?
It's coming.
You can see the dashboard?
We see
Yeah.
that says COVID Resource Center cases and deaths.
Yes, absolutely. That's it. Okay, good. All right. So this has three major components, and each one of those provide information about cases, fatalities, demographics, testing, tracing, treating, and surveillance. So there is a world dashboard that you can see hopefully here, and you can do all sorts of interesting things with it. Again, we're going to make all this available to you. It's been in construction for the last month, but you can actually go to let's see, let me move this. You can see on the right-hand side, I hope, up at the top here, you see a little date, 5/30/20, and if you click on that, you can go all the way back to, we can try to go all the way back here to early days. And here you see the map is not very populated. So when you move forward, and you can click on this and it will move forward slowly, or you can click on it and make the map start to populate. You can see the population here. So that is the international one. There is a USA dashboard that has very similar characteristics, except it shows the data for the US. And then I want to get to the Texas dashboard, which again has cases, fatalities. And I wanted to illustrate the fact that you can go on, if I can get down here, I can go here. By the way, I can do the same thing that I showed you with the world. I can go on, click on the on that action, and it will show you the progress of population of cases in Texas over time. But right now, I want to illustrate something which is fairly important. So here is, can you see this? Cameron County. So if you click on any one county in the map, you can get the number of cases, the cases per 10,000 people, which is a measure that we like to use because it's relatively comparative, and you see the total population. So you could go in yourself and calculate how many cases per 10,000. But here is the issue, and this, I want to illustrate this point because it's highly important. I know that people like to compare one county with another or one state, but let's see what happens when we do that. So here's Cameron County. You have 17.9 cases per 10,000, 764 cases in a population of 427,000. Let's go over here to Hidalgo County, which has 560 cases, or 6.4 per population, per 10,000, okay? And you say, wow, we're a lot worse off than Hidalgo County. Well, guess what? It all depends on testing. Now let me show you what I mean. Let's go up here to testing, and we'll bring up our state again, but look and see what we see here for testing. Let's see if I can bring this up. I need to bring it up a little more. Yeah. So Cameron has tests per 10,000, 57. Total tests 2,800, but 57 tests per 10,000 people. What happens to when we go here? 35 tests per 100,000 for 10,000 people. Well, we all know the more you test, the more you're going to find, because that's what you're trying to do. And if you actually say, well, the ratio, I've actually calculated the ratio here, it's about 1.6. So we have about 1.6 more tests overall than Hidalgo County. When you actually start multiplying this out, Hidalgo County is much closer than we are, much closer to us in terms of the number of cases per 10,000. So just a caveat to show why it's important to look at all of the information, because testing is kind of everything. And I think that what Cameron County can be very proud of, and especially the city of Brownsville, is the amount of testing you've done relative to the other areas. So this is an illustration of how you're going to be able to use this dashboard. Now, the other thing that I want to point out, and I'm just about finished, So you can do that for any one of the counties, and you can start to look at that. You can also go and ask the questions about the number of cases, the demographics of cases, and click on those and click on a county and get that information. So it's a wealth of information in one place that we're going to make available to you. But the key thing is now we're going to start to connect the county data with the city data that I just showed you. So eventually, and you can imagine this takes a lot of programming. Our folks are programming like mad. But what eventually you will have is the ability to go on the dashboard, click on it, and start to look at some of those maps that I've shown you, because our troops are working to put all that together so that you will have as complete a picture as we know how to do for the outbreak in both the county and in the city. So, and finally, I want to share with you a final thought, and let's see if I can bring that up. Doesn't matter. I'll just. So we want to provide you with real-time support and assistance, and that's what we're aiming at. So we want to make this available to you so that you can see it for yourself and you can ask us questions and think of other things that we're not doing that would be helpful. We're going to provide real-time geocoding, as you've seen, that mouthful of analysis that I described to you and showed you. The dashboard is there again for tracking so that you will have the data. And finally, we want to expand the experience and the model to other communities, as I've already mentioned. So I'm going to stop there and stop sharing my, and I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any suggestions or criticism, anything that's on your mind.
Dr. McCormick, this is Mayor Mendez. My question now is going to be, so we have all this great data. You're building a wonderful dashboard. It's super informative. Now, how can we use this to help the city combat the issues that we're dealing with?
Well, I think I tried to illustrate one of the issues with those two maps to show you how we can find places where we're seeing the highest level of positivity. So that's certainly one area. Another area is we're building a database for contacts. We would like to see how much clustering is there around a case. And is that a way that we would then be able to go in and start testing as we expand testing? Mayor, we've talked about the need. Everybody understands the need for more testing, and many of us are trying to do that with our own laboratory. So we would like to be able to go in and say, how much clustering is there? One of the things that I didn't want to get too much in the weeds here, but Dr. Bauer has observed a lot of what we call heterogeneity in the distribution of some of the testing. And so she's devising some analyses to see how much heterogeneity is there and where are the areas, the hottest areas. And that means looking at clustering. And once we get the contact data up where we can look at that, we can try to understand better how it's being spread from an index case to the contacts around them, and to see whether that's happening mainly just in the neighborhood, mainly in the household, or are there wider areas, and are there people who seem to be spreading it more widely than others? Those are some of the issues. Eventually, when we get to a broader area of testing, this kind of information is going to help us to focus our testing where we think it might be the most helpful. And we can already start to get some of that sense by just looking at these older maps. So I think those are the areas where, and the other thing that our team is working on is sampling. I remember the other day in our other meeting, I talked about the strategy of sampling rather than just going out and testing. There is a whole science around sampling. And I've asked our team in Houston to try to help us to work out a sampling frame. So let's take a population that we're very interested in, such as the hospital and clinic staff. We know clearly just from our common sense that some people are going to be more at risk in the clinics, working in the clinics, and going to the clinics than others. So we can stratify the risk based on people's jobs, but within those stratifications, we can also devise a sampling frame that says how many people, if we sample randomly, how many people do we have to sample in order to reach a certain level that we want to reach, let's say 3% or 5% of positivity. We can calculate all of that and actually know how many people do we need to test in order to know that. And that's a much better strategy than just saying we're going to go in and either test everybody, which may not be very practical, or we're going to try to choose just based on our intuition the people that may be highest at risk. So that, and we can do that for any level of risk. We can also do that for businesses. And so once we have worked out a sampling frame, this information will help us to use that sampling frame to do, again, it's following the science rather than just our intuition. So those are some of the ways. And the final thing is, once we have vaccination, it's clear to me that we're not going to be able to just go out and vaccinate everybody in the community. So now the question is, what should be our strategy? And there are two areas that we need to consider in terms of vaccine. One is, how do we limit transmission? So that's a very important part. And we know from influenza, for example, we learned that one of the ways of doing that, which is now why we recommend school children and small children get vaccinated, is that that's one of the major transmission engines for flu vaccine, for flu virus transmission. We also now know that all people who are in staff, and this would make sense in a coronavirus vaccination, we know that all of the staff of a nursing home would be among the high risk because the nursing and because the nursing people in nursing homes are high risk for death. And that's also why now virtually every clinic and hospital requires all of their staff to be vaccinated against flu, because they've learned that that was one of the ways that the flu virus gets into these high risk populations. So the second arm of the vaccine strategy has got to be, how do we protect people from severe disease? And that means identifying our key people at high risk for severe disease and focusing vaccine on them. And working out a whole strategy for that. This kind of data is going to help us going forward as we finally start to get vaccine. Now, one of the things that people haven't talked about very much is treatment. But as we start to look to see whether plasma treatments, that is antibody treatment, transferring antibody from people who are immune to people who are ill, to try to limit it. At some point, we're going to ask the question, when should we treat these people and which ones should we treat if this is a viable option? And the same for drug treatment. So again, this kind of information is going to help to inform all of those strategies.
Thanks, Doctor.
Any other questions?
I would just really like to thank you for all of the work that you've been doing from day one with coronavirus. I know a lot of people like myself are just so appreciative of the knowledge and skill that you've shared with all of us. This is just, coronavirus is a monster, and it really has the ability to hurt a lot of people. But because the city of Brownsville is offering this testing, and because it's being mitigated in such a certain way, a lot of people have avoided crossing paths with it. But I guess my only, and it has, I guess it's not a question, but my only concern and my only thing that I wish I can communicate to the community is there are still a lot of people who don't take this as serious as it is. And a lot of those people wind up contracting it and giving it to other people. And so I guess the biggest battle that we have is that false sense of confidence that a lot of people have, not feeling like it's around, not feeling like it's circulating in the community. And I'm so grateful to your work and to you sharing this with the community so that people can know that people are being infected in our city.
Well, we are here. We've been here for 20 years, and we're here for that very purpose. So I'm very happy that we're able to be partners with the city and to share what we know and our experience to be able to help out as best we can. I know this looks a little bit like, it looks a little slow, but this is a major undertaking by lots of people. We're going to get there, and you're going to have some really nice data to be able to make decisions that are based more on science than many bad decisions are made not because people had bad judgment, because they didn't have the right information. And so we hope to be able to provide the correct information so the best decisions can be made using the best data we can put together. And we're very pleased to be able to do that.
Thanks, Dr. McCormick. You and Dr. Fischerhawk are truly a blessing to our city and our county. And there's so many, when I hear all of the great work and analysis going on, I feel very sad for the cities and the counties that don't have similar expertise and have to just really go on faith and that intuition as opposed to the opportunity to have the close ties to science. And we're truly blessed as a city and as a county to have you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. McCormick. This is John Cohen. I have a quick question. Is your team also keeping track of the hospitalization rate for positives in our community?
So, John, thank you. We are reaching out now, working with the two hospitals. We have requested that they put together a database of all the people they've tested and provide us with whether we're hospitalized, not hospitalized, their symptoms, all of those things, to be able to add that to the existing database. Now, we're going to be capturing some of that here, but not so much of it, because awful lot of this is the drive-through and that sort of thing. So now we want to enrich this by bringing in, we've asked the clinics to provide their data and the hospitals, and eventually we'll have that kind of information. Again, this is an undertaking that is unprecedented in some ways, but thankfully, what really is good about this is think of all the tools we have now that we wouldn't have had. Even back during the H1N1 outbreak in 2009, when many of you remember that, we did something similar with the county, but we didn't have anything like the tools we have today. And I mean the software, the analytic tools, the databases that we're able to put together. So the answer to your question is we want to know who got hospitalized, what were the symptoms that led to their hospitalization, what were the outcomes, so that we can go back and look at underlying conditions in our community, what were the factors that resulted in severe disease, what were factors that resulted in deaths. And we're not finished yet, so this is an ongoing process, but having more and more of this information at our fingertips is going to help us going forward as well. As I look at what's happened over the last several weeks now of cases in the county, particularly in Brownsville, because the predominance of the cases are in Brownsville. But again, buyer beware. That may be because of testing, and that may be because of the forward thinking about getting testing started early in Brownsville. So I'm not suggesting that Brownsville is Brownsville may or may not have the bulk of cases. I suspect it has a lot to do with testing. But the fact is, we're still at a plateau. Fortunately, we're not yet going this way up, but we're also not going down to a really low level, like 1 or 2 cases a day. So I think that we're still vulnerable, and we know that all of the things that have happened after Memorial Day and all those other things that we may still expect an increase, and we're aware of it, and we're going to be tracking that. But particularly, one of the important canaries in the mine is, in fact, those people who get hospitalized. And so we have these regular meetings, as you well know, on Tuesday and Friday. And that helps us be able to track the many things. How many positives are seeing in the emergency room? How many people are going into the hospital? Or is it increasing? Those are all indications of what's going on in the community.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Dr. McCormick.
Thank you all.
Next up on the agenda, we have presentation of Crossroads 2020 report by Mr. Ramiro Gonzalez.
Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. On just a kind of a summary of Crossroads.
Order cases for the iPad.
So
it'll be charged from the census account.
The feedback.
Mute. Somebody's not on mute.
Okay. So I think everybody's on mute now. Okay. Sorry. When we first started this, if you think about Crossroads, is really 5 festivals in one on one weekend, or in this case, it was a Monday through Wednesday. So you gave us funding January 6th, and this happened the week of Charo Days. So in about 6 to 7 weeks, we were able to put this together. I really felt that it was a true community effort. The city was the glue that brought the entire community together. We could not have done this without a variety of partners. And so some of these partners obviously sponsored, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but some of them just volunteered, and others, just provided assistance where it was needed. So Crossroads is a festival in Brownsville, Texas, provided opportunities for learning, networking, innovation through a collaboration of paths in film, music, and food, politics, and art. The event highlighted local and regional artists, business, and innovators. So one of the goals of Crossroads was to try to bring back some of that talent that has left, and recognize it and empower it through Crossroads. So I'm just going to go through a couple of some of the pictures, and so you can kind of get a flavor of what Crossroads really entailed. And so we'll start with film. Okay. So you see the first time that we used the Brownsville Performing Arts Academy, it was a full house for a screening. At the outside, we also had kind of a red carpet treatment before the screening. RJ Mitty did come back to Brownsville from a job that he had. We actually had an international premiere. This movie had not premiered in the United States, and so he was able to assist in that. On the music side, we had bands from northern Mexico and also mariachis. Sorry, this is a little slow. Yeah. We'll just skip over them. Just go to the budget. The last slide. Okay. Sorry, it's a pretty big presentation. Let's see if this is a little faster. Just skip over. Can you go to the slides, the lower slides? Yeah. Valuable content. So I'm just going to skip over the pictures here. We'll just get to the meat of the presentation. It really was kind of, like I said, it really was an all-out effort. I'll try to play a video here that might work, that'll sum everything up. But with regards to what we got out of it and how much we spent, this was
The PDF file.
The PowerPoint presentation.
I'm going to take this moment to ask that any future presentations or any IT issues for the meetings be resolved prior to the meetings, because this is a pretty elaborate presentation, as was Dr. McCormick's. And when we don't test those, it ends up, really affecting the presentation and the content. So I ask that we please have these either preloaded or have all the tech issues resolved prior to the meeting. Ramiro, do you want to speak to the different, we spoke about, I know that you started off talking about the film. You were talking about the music aspect of it as well. Did you want to talk about the other components, which was the art, and then the food?
Here, can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, so once again, on the music side, we had bands from local bands, but also our main attractions were from northern Mexico, specifically from Monterrey. And so this here is the UTV Mariachi, once again, a community support effort. And this is a band from Monterrey. This is our headliner. And we had a very good turnout on Saturday. This is a band from Matamoros. And this is actually Mitch Bradford, who is a local talent who graduated here from Brownsville. And is now trying to start a music career. So he had a very good turnout as well. On the food side, we partnered up with Texas Monthly for with the barbecue editor and the taco editor. That gave us a lot of media advantage with Texas Monthly. They shared it on their page, and we also got a lot of traction on that. Jack Gilmore, once again, is a local PACE graduate. He came back and provided one of our VIP dinners, and he was also an attraction. And this is part of the open fire barbecue. There's another picture of him. That's another. He's the Texas Grill Master, is what he calls himself on Instagram. But he's once again he's Brownsville born, Brownsville educated, and we invited him back to participate at Crossroads. And so we can't forget about tacos. And on the politics end, we invited Dr. Norma Pimentel, Sister Norma, sorry. And once again, she's also from Brownsville. People forget she's from Brownsville because of all her work in McAllen. And so she closed out the political end of the talks, and it was a fantastic speech. And so once again, a professor from UTRGV. A younger generation of folks wanting to participate in Crossroads. We partnered up with the Texas Tribune, and this was the panel. And then for the first time, we had the two mayors of Matamoros share stage. And here they are with the Consul of Mexico, and that was something that hadn't happened before. On the art side, we wanted to highlight a local artist. This is part of some art during the film festival. But we really highlighted Cande Aguilar, who who just recently had his first showing in New York, his first private show in New York. And once again, we partnered up with a couple of local businesses and the Costumes of the Americas to have a fashion show as a tribute to Charo Days in just kind of a different modern spin. And so what do we get out of it for what we invested in? So you see the digital campaign. BCIC did provide this in kind. I believe they spent about $8,700 on the digital campaign. And so you see that we had about 4.7 million total impressions and about 3.2 million people actually reached. Post engagement, we had 230,000 actually engaged with a post, whether it's on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. And a lot of the video, a lot of the content that was brought out, we had about 50,000 people view the videos. And so on the bottom of the screen, you see some of that social media impact that we had. All the bands were sharing on their Instagram, the barbecue editor, the taco editor, everybody was tagging and sharing on their page. We also did billboard placement. We did a little bit of radio in Matamoros and Laredo, and we did printed media. So total earned media value of this festival was $1.7 million. And earned media is really a number that if you were to go out and pay for all the coverage that we got, that is what that value that is the value of that. And so BCIC, as we said, spent about $7,200 on this advertising. So on the financial end, this is what we ended up spending on the music is about $43,000. That's usually the lion's share of any festival. The film side was $25,000. Politics was $4,250. Food was $21,000. Art $2,500. Marketing about $11,000 when you include some other marketing materials. So that totaled about $108,879. We were able, even though it was a short time frame and this was a new product, that we did not have any pictures or anything to explain to people what we were trying to do. We were able to get some sponsorships: Texas Regional Bank, IBC, Doctors Hospital, Sombrero Fest. Somebody bought 300 movie tickets. So total between tickets and T-shirts, we also sold T-shirts. We ended up with a revenue of about $20,000. That does not include sponsorships. So $20,000 was just ticket and T-shirt sales, plus all the sponsorships. So the total net cost of Crossroads 2020 was $79,458. And so I wish we could play the video, but I'll have to share the video by email. And so we really are looking forward to the 2021 edition of Crossroads. February 17th through the 20th are the temporary dates. They're not quite concrete yet, but we really look forward to, we think that those are going to be the dates. So we look forward to your support for 2021. We understand that there are a lot of concerns, but we hope that by then we are in a place where we could have the second version of this. We did learn a lot. There are things that we could always do better. And one of the things is actually just having more time. We had 6 weeks to put it together. If we have 6 months to put it together, we could knock it out of the park. And so thank you. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Sure. Well, Ramiro, I'd like to just say a couple things. One of the things that we learned from Crossroads, other than that there was a lot of community support, because it grew, I would say that the attendance doubled day over day from Monday to Tuesday doubled, and then Tuesday to Wednesday doubled. Kinky, which is our headliner, was amazing. Anybody that experienced it really had a great show. But one thing we learned was that the better timing would probably be the weekend before Charo Days, rather than the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Charo Days week. We wanted to take advantage of the individuals that were down here for Charo Days, but we found that there was a lot of people who wanted to attend that couldn't because it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So next year, if we do this, we're looking at maybe doing a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something like that, so that we can draw a larger audience. Now that we have so many impressions and so much content, we should be able to draw a lot of larger sponsors to make this festival self-sustaining. And we had some individuals that have experience with other concerts and other festivals like this that were very impressed with Crossroads for being a year one. And individuals, not only the bands, but other individuals that were involved, thought it was a really amazing festival. The venue being downtown was great. The backdrops were amazing. We got some really good photos and video. Unfortunately, we couldn't see the video because it was great, but we had really a great showcase of homegrown talent, individuals that some of them are still here, but a lot of them grew up here and left and are doing some great things. But we saw that there is a market for this. There was an audience that maybe did not want the traditional Sombrero Fest experience and wanted something different. And I think having 5 festivals in one was a really good mix of things for different people. And I'm really looking forward to being able to do this next year. Like I said, the goal is to get sponsors based on the content that we had and the impressions we had, so that this festival would be something that's self-sustaining going forward. If we need to look towards commission funding, we can consider that. But the dates, I believe, are taking into consideration the weekend before Charla Days, Ramiro, if I'm not mistaken. And then if we are able to move ahead, considering the social distancing norms that we're living in now, and kind of seeing what the future holds for the pandemic, then we can consider doing this again. But we're going to probably have to make that call September, October, to see whether or not we're going to be able to put this together. But there's a lot of people that are excited about doing it again next year. I think we build an audience and a reputation now for putting together a really first-class festival and experience that I'm looking forward to next year. So I wanted to thank the commission again for believing this year one and showing support.
And I just want to say that nobody on this commission more than me is ready to throw the most huge party we've ever seen once this coronavirus mess is over. I just think that once it's safe for us to all come out, we should party in the street till the sun, even after the sun goes down, to celebrate the fact that our city is no longer in this situation. It's going to be a big party, and maybe it's going to be Crossroads, who knows? But that's something that we have to look forward to during these dark times.
Thank you.
Ramiro, this is Nurit. I have a few questions. Did anyone keep a tally of like how many attendants there were altogether through the days, or even which events were more popular, either digitally or in person? Like where were more people showing up?
Yeah, we have the ticket sales. Obviously, the higher ticket sales were Wednesday. It really helped that we did some advertising in Matamoros. We had a lot of people coming from Matamoros for that band specifically. We could provide, we have all that data. I can just tell you just straight off the bat, the higher ticket sales were Wednesday. And it also took, once people understood what we were trying to do, people kind of started to say, oh, okay, hey, this is cool, right? And so that's why I also think there was an uptick on Wednesday sales. I can tell you that the talks on Wednesday, we managed to get SpaceX to talk. Camille Playhouse was full on Wednesday for both SpaceX and the mayor talk. And so we had events that were full. But yeah, as far as ticket sales is concerned, we have all that data, and we can definitely share it.
And Commissioner Galansky, I can tell you from being there, like Ramiro said, the highest attended events, the paid events were on Wednesday. The musical headliner had a lot of people. All the food events were really well attended. I think some of the issues with the food and the location being the way it was is some of the people were sticking around the food areas and weren't coming back around for the music on day one and day two. So that's maybe a logistical issue going forward for if we do this again. Also, the SpaceX event was really well attended. The talks were really well attended. Those were free events, so there's not going to be any ticket sales necessarily for those, but those were really well attended. and we saw that there was a great reception for the talks and just general interest in SpaceX as well. So that networking event was really, really good.
So going forward, would the focus still be art, film, music, and food?
I think the ones that worked the most was film, music, and food. The politics part, which is a Crossroad Talks, that I think is something that can have its own day or its own separate kind of venue. It can be during the actual festival itself, but I think it would merit using the BPAC facility or another facility during the day. So I think that in itself is something. But what we found that people were more drawn to and willing to pay for was the film, the music, and the food.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that didn't help with politics was we were also right before the primaries, and so one of the thoughts behind the talks and the politics were to try to bring in some speakers or some some well-known figures, but it didn't help that we were right before the primaries. But I think it remains. I think the focus remains these five tracks, with obviously polishing it up, right? I mean, we learned a lot, and we can always do better, and just try to make it better. I think each one of these tracks had an interest. We just need to polish it and keep polishing it.
And I can say also the collaboration and the partnership we had with Texas Monthly on the barbecue and the taco events were amazing. They were really well attended, extremely well received. The Texas Monthly team was really excited about the festival. Tim, Jose, some others that were here loved it. And one of the individuals that was involved thinks that we can probably get a title sponsor next year that'll pay for the whole thing. But that's kind of a wait to be seen, depending on how the world reacts over the next couple months with the virus.
So if we are lucky enough to be able to have it next year, you might want to consider a session on COVID. And I think it might be very compelling to evaluate or discuss the COVID experience here in the Valley compared to the rest of the state or even internationally. If we're allowed to have it, it may be actually very compelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would agree with Dr. Gowan on that. And I think everything about it was so awesome. And this is just so great to see it come into Brownsville and how everybody reacted to it and the love that people had for it. But I agree with you, Mayor, on the timing of it. I would like to see it the week before Charo Days, because with all of the events and excitement of Charo Days, I just was exhausted. So it would be great to see it the week before to kind of get everybody in the mood for Charo Days. And then, well, the other complaint I had was I didn't like the baby goat that they cooked.
What?
The goat that they had on this skewer.
that was art, and that flew. Everybody ate that up.
Let's not do that here.
I think the second goats for me was Thursday. That there wasn't a parade on Thursday, so that's the only time I got to get some sleep.
Yeah.
What we have now, just to close out, is we have all the content, we have all the video, we can go pitch to sponsors. I really feel confident that this thing could grow, and could grow to be one of the, if not the premier event for Brownsville.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, Ramiro, this is John. I just want to congratulate you guys. You guys did a great job. I went to most of the events, and they were, considering the amount of time you guys had to pull this off, I was very impressed. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be nearly as professional, and you guys did a great job. And I look forward to year 2 on this.
Thanks.
I will say John got his money's worth over the 3 days.
I tried.
All right, well, thanks, Ramiro, for the presentation.
Next year, we had the public comment period. We did have one person that signed up for the public comment. And,
okay, are they here?
Mr. Jerry Ruiz, are you on the line? No, Mayor, he's not here.
Okay, we'll move on. Is anybody else here for public comment? Okay.
Next, we have the work sessions. I'll go ahead and read number 1. Discussion regarding the City of Brownsville response to the urgent public necessity concerning COVID-19, otherwise known as coronavirus, including but not limited to: letter A, continuity plan update, city staffing, facilities, and services, including actions and continuity of such operations. Letter B, the financial update, emergency procurement, and letter C, drive-through collections testing site update. We will first have Mr. Joel Garza on the continuity plan update.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commission. We do have a brief presentation on our efforts as far as the BTX Recovers Committee. So BTX Recovers was formed to assist the city leadership in developing some type of protocols and how do we reopen the city safely. And so we divided into phases: the response, the recover, and then the renew and reimagine. The committee was also divided into subcommittees to help us align with the goals. And so we did a finance subcommittee, a operations and facilities, a safety and communications. And then further in the presentation, I'll talk to creating a fifth subcommittee, which would be health. And so next slide, please. And so in this approach, we did a 3-phase respond. And so how do we respond to the current situation? What are the immediate actions that are needed? As far as recovery, which we'll be getting into, how do we look at our efforts to reopen and reopen safely? And then lastly is the renew and reimagine. I think COVID has provided an opportunity to identify new solutions, both to our city, how we provide a service, and to our facilities. So next slide, please. And so in this approach, we looked at the cross-sector engagement, making sure that we didn't only use the stakeholders that are well-known in that field. We wanted to make sure that we included everyone, even if we had for example, a finance person discussing operations. And so we wanted to get a diverse group to develop protocols. Next slide, please. And so in the respond, obviously you're aware, the city has communicated up-to-date information regarding the COVID, the guidelines, the symptoms, testing information. Obviously, the city has been pushing for that testing, and the state and local measures.
Hello. If you can hear me, I've been waiting for over an hour, and you said you couldn't hear me. For public comments, I've been waiting for over an hour. I've waited through this whole meeting. I would like my time.
Mr. Reese, can you just wait till this presentation ends and we can go ahead and go through it, please?
Well, I'm just cutting in because you ignored me for saying I was not online when I was, and I was saying hello, hello, and everything. So just letting you know, I've been waiting for over an hour.
Okay.
Before 5 o'clock.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, go ahead and just finish up and we can have Mr. Reese speak.
Yes, Mayor. If I can have the presentation, please. Okay, move, I think, 2 slides. Isabella, can you? Right there. Yes, thank you. And so, as I mentioned, we provided up-to-date communication. We let folks know what the efforts and how we partner up to provide a economic relief to our small business. And then we also identified methods on providing city service. And so we obviously, being as a local government, we have to make sure that our residents, our citizens, and our visitors are still taken care of, even though our facilities are closed. And so how do we provide that service safely? So next slide. In the recovery phase is where we continue to communicate, again, the up-to-date information, continue the testing. But we looked at more on, okay, how do we reopen specifically each city facility safely? And so I know during the weekend, y'all were provided a draft copy of the reopening plan. We did get some comments, and so we're still working with that and making sure we have a more robust plan in place before we open. And then lastly, obviously working with other organizations to assist the local community and businesses. And so one of the examples, and I know this morning there was a talk on it, is the disinfectant specialist training, a partnership through the city with Texas Alamos College and Workforce Solutions Cameron. Next slide. Then lastly, COVID has provided an opportunity to reevaluate ourselves. And so how do we obviously communicate what is the new norm as folks start coming into our facility? What can we identify? There can be changes, either how we provide a service, how do we transition into an online base, for example, permitting service, and also identify viable solutions for our city facilities. And so how do we minimize the spread of COVID-19? For example, one of the examples we gave was the doors that gets touched very frequently. And so how do we retrofit some type of automatic doors through sensors? Next slide, please. And so based on those three phases, we divided into subcommittees. And so we had a finance and operations, a safety, communications, and then lastly, again, we're thinking of doing a health subcommittee. Next slide. So the priorities for our subcommittees were obviously people, our residents, our visitors, and staff is the highest priority, keeping them safely. And then how do we innovate? How do we take advantage of this opportunity to look at things either to change our facilities or how we operate as a city? And then lastly is how do we make sure we use our tax dollars responsible, but at the same time, look at funding opportunities either to COVID funding or CARES Act. Next slide. As far as the finance subcommittee, we looked at establishing a framework on vacancies, which ones are the positions that are needed, which ones are not, that we can hold off. Developing a toolkit that will give directors what items can be cut, what innovative technologies can be implemented that can save in the long run. And then lastly, develop some type of framework that is flexible for items that may not be foreseen. And so what would be the worst case scenario? Next slide. On the operations and facilities, obviously, how do we develop a plan of action, but that does not disrupt the city service? Safety, how do we continue developing ways to keep our residents, our visitors, and our staff safe? And then looking forward to long-term solutions, how do we modify our city facilities that will minimize the spread of COVID-19? Next slide. Safety, system overwide, how do we keep our facilities and our staff safe? PPE, making sure that we have the right equipment in hand for all. And then lastly, health checks, conduct health screenings for all visitors, residents, and employees entering any city facilities. Next slide. Communications, making sure that we provide the most up-to-date information to our public. How do we standardize, and just an example as today's meeting is virtual, and so How do we maximize technology to continue these virtual meetings, and what protocols will have to be set in place? And then lastly, making sure that we explain our recovery plan to the public, to our citizens, to our visitors as they start coming back to the city. Next slide. And again, something that we will continue and start a fifth subcommittee would be health. And so this would be to continue the testing and discuss any items related to health as far as recovery and reopening. And the next slide. And so, Mayor, Commissioner, that's the presentation I had. I know it was pretty brief. We're still working on the reopening plans. You did see a draft of it. And so, again, the intent is to reopen the city based on data, based on scientific facts. I know the CDC recommends the 14-day decline. And so I know some folks have asked when is the city reopening? We don't have a specific date. We feel that currently we're providing a level of service to our citizens that is up to par. And so, again, the reopening will have to be based on data. I can take any questions.
Mayor Mendez, this is Nerith. If I may suggest, can we take the public comment because it can only be 3 minutes? Because I have a few questions and I know I'm going to take more than 3 minutes. So,
Mr. Reese, are you on? Hello, Mr. Reese.
James, can you unmute his?
There he is.
And I actually have some questions for him as well.
This isn't a question thing. You've got your 3 minutes of public comments, so go ahead.
The timer is going to start at this time.
Okay, Mr. Reese, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. We're seeing righteous anger spilling into the street for George Floyd and many others. I'm calling for the immediate removal of that Confederate plaque in Washington Park. Cover it, explaining what's under. Better yet, have it honor and apologize posthumously those African-American soldiers of the Brownsville affair in 1906. The plaque is an overt symbol of racism, hate, and white supremacy. Put it in a museum library. State why it was deviously donated by the Daughters of the Confederacy. The display can reference the past and present racial and social injustice with updates on progress and tragedies which will sadly continue. Please form a civilian review board and develop community policing which will foster trust and good relationships between citizens and the police. Apologies if they exist. I didn't see it on the city's website. And racism goes with poverty. We saw the rush for food and essentials during this COVID-19 crisis. I hope the city makes Brownsville an edible city. Other cities have planted edible trees and plants all over the city to fight hunger. And since we live in an area of poverty and we're prone to hurricanes, this will surely help in some way. As a 7-year volunteer of the Brownsville Bike Barn, we initially planted edible plants there to share with the community. Schools, churches, citizens could also plant and share. And while money does not grow on trees, which is always hard to find in a crisis, especially with this current pandemic, food does go on trees. Also, what would help during this pandemic and after? Traffic calming. Think about it. In some countries, traffic calming is driving 15 miles an hour all over the city. Here, it could be in the morning and afternoons when students, families are too scared to walk or bike at a safe distance. Maybe collaborating with BISD and other schools could be seen into. Plus, this would support a healthy, non-polluting alternative promoting exercise, walking, biking, jogging to school or work during the hours I mentioned, as well as lead to safer driving and less fatalities. Finally, let's truly be non-polluting and fight racism. Please make a formal declaration against these LNG companies like other Valley cities have done. We know climate change is real and that racism persists. LNG is environmental racism. These companies coerce their way into low-income communities of color, making false promises. They'll damage our health, ruin our economy, and spoil our pristine areas for their selfishness, adding insult to injury. Cameron County is raising property taxes while the polluting LNG entities will get tax abatements. We'll be stuck footing their bill and deal with the ensuing cleanup. We have the opportunity to be at the forefront of clean, renewable, alternative energy. We could be the new Silicon Rio Grande Valley instead of another decrepit and polluted waste site. Help stop these LNG races. Help yourself, your families, your community. Make Brownsville and the Valley the green leader it is meant to be. Let's lead. Let's be allies of justice. Let's learn why African Americans and their allies are protesting. Listen to the medical professionals, not the leaders of deception. Important history is being made right now. Future generations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reese. Commissioner Galosky, you had some questions?
First, because you said that there's no specific date for a reopening the city. So what are we going to do about the library, parks and recreation specifically, especially now that summer vacation has started? What services are we offering to entertain kids or provide sort of daycare services for parents who have to work? Because I know that a lot of people, especially like in Sacramento, rely on the summer programs that are held at the Gonzales Park or Oliveira Park. And so what can we do for them? Or what are we going to do for them?
So Commissioner, thank you for the question. I know Damaris is on the call. I'll ask her if she can help me out.
I'm joining slowly.
Go ahead, Damaris, you're unmuted.
At this time, we have not. We've been providing and abiding by the local declarations. We've been putting together and researching the CDC guidelines for following for child daycare centers. We would have to reduce our offerings, and we do have a phased reopening plan proposed. It has not yet been approved. It is possible, but our normal capacity during summer is 100 at the rec and about 150 max at Gonzales and 35 at Oliveira. So it is a small contingency. Trust me, my children attend. So I'm feeling the impact as well of not being able to put our kids in there. But we want to make sure that we are following the measures based on the information we're getting from the testing results and the data, and what our community feels comfortable with opening, taking a very we have that ready. We can look into that, and if the commission is ready for that, we have it to submit.
Or Damaris, since you're there. Also, I know that the Little League has expressed interest to maybe, well, they've already started getting ready for starting in the fall, and they would like to start practicing in July. Any ideas on how that's going to go, or any questions that you have about that?
I did actually, one of my priorities was to help our stakeholders. So I did draft a stakeholders guide specifically in relation to parks and recreation. So whether that's our leagues or people who utilize our facilities and whatnot. And so I've got that drafted. It's been submitted to the recovery team. And if the commission wants to take a look at before we issue it to our stakeholders, it really helps them think through the planning process, think about your supply chain, making sure you've got contingencies in place. And it's a really, and I stole it from our NRPA and some other different amenities, putting it all together. I just stakeholders, so I will take no credit whatsoever. But yeah, so we've got that ready as well. It's just pending a review, and then once we get the blessing for that, we can share it with them, and then we can help guide all of our stakeholders safely as we can the information that we have. And for those that don't know, sorry, NRPA is recreation Parks Association. It's our national governing body. And then we have TRAPS, which is our state one, Texas Recreation and Park Society. And if you have more questions, please ask them away.
Sure. No, Noel, are you on the line somewhere?
Commissioner, go ahead.
Noel, sorry, the city manager. Or I guess Coral, but
Yes, I'm here.
okay. So I feel like we should be a little bit farther along in the game, because I realize that it takes a lot of time and effort to bring together people from the different departments and to come up with this document and to come to a consensus and stuff. But I feel like we're behind the 8 ball. One, like in terms of offering these services, which I think in my district or I know are very well used for daycare services for the children, but also just like in terms of the planning. Normally the Planning and Zoning Board would have met the first Thursday of the month. Now last time I think I spoke, or at the last meeting, it was going to be at the end of June. I feel that we're stalled, like the whole city's at a standstill, and we need to get a jump start on it. So any way that we can speed it up, or I think we need to, but maybe we need to.
Yeah, I mean, glad to speak to that. We're, as I was mentioning in the past few meetings when the committee was first created and the efforts that were being done, since the governor's plan was released on April 27th, our efforts immediately began to support businesses. And we shared that when Helen gave her presentation during the continuity plan about 2-3 weeks ago. Our efforts have been focused on doing the drive-through testing, and they have been focused on the boots on the ground initiatives, getting the disinfection program set up with TSC to support small businesses reopening. So the first month that we've had since the governor released his reopening plan, we've actually been focusing on supporting the business community and simultaneously getting ready for us to open up. In the opening up process, in that continuity plan, there are questions that what we have in mind is that over the next couple of weeks, so June 16th, this plan can be initiated tomorrow. Our intention was to expand to external stakeholders, leagues, other entities, the zoo. We've already been informally supporting other entities with their reopening plans, is to just get additional feedback, share with you what the subject matter expertise that our department directors provide for their individual departments is. What do they see as being PPE challenges? What are retrofits we're going to have to make to operations? The reopening plan is pretty much complete. It's in draft mode, but it's complete. It can be initiated tomorrow. The only thing we wanted to get more feedback on is, and raise awareness on is, these are the things that we foresee being issues. Like, we're going to have daycare facilities. There's liability concerns. Do we want to open ourselves up to that? Do we want to be opening up? And it's a balancing of a variety of factors. We can open it up, but we also are going to be open to certain liabilities. So once we share the thoroughness of what all department directors have been able to do, what are the adjustments that we have to make? We've been thinking about permanent retrofits to buildings, for example, that we can use CARES funding for. So it's really us making sure that as we open up the plan, we say, here's all the internal due diligence that we've done. Here's all the information that we can share. Some decisions will fall directly under me and us as an organization. Some we want to get the commission's feedback because of issues that may surface down the road. Others will come from independent little leagues and national associations who have to make decisions for leagues that we don't really operate, that are leased out fields. So it won't really fall on us. We have a slew of best practices that we referenced from across all departments. We also have technology capabilities, as you were describing, that we've had to shore up. Planning is one of those that was a deficiency we knew we had, but we had to. We've actually implemented Office 365 because we were overly dependent on Zoom and WebEx, and it was quite the soup or slew of different softwares and hardwares. So there's all these other things. As we've gone to telework, we have 12% of our employees on telework. We didn't have all the hardware and software and virus control, antivirus, and all those things. So there's been a lot of things that we've been able to do to remain functional, and I would say even perform at a high level in all that we've been doing. But at this point, the question becomes, once we go and commit to reopening, it's not going to be something that we're going to be able to come back to. We want to be able to do something, do it for the long haul, with some permanence to it and say, here are some permanent adaptations. Because if not, we could easily find ourselves, if there's a second wave or if there's other issues, having to come right back and close certain things down. So we have to be thoughtful. We want to engage with you all over the next couple of weeks, and maybe June 16th is a date that we actually pull the trigger. But we'll have a better sense once we open up the conversation to additional feedback and perspective. That's our response.
I have a comment. I don't think there's a city in this country, much less in the world, that isn't frustrated with how slow things are going. I don't think that Commissioner Golonsky is unique in that matter. But the point, and I have 4 kids, and I relied heavily on summer programs at the zoo and the Camille and so on and so forth, because I've always been a working mother. But the one thing I would never do is send my kids to a summer program unless I was confident that numbers were going down or at least static, and that things were prepared properly. And numbers are not going down. And it's pretty much impossible to predict when exactly that's going to happen. So much as I totally understand the frustration, I also understand as a mother wanting to keep my kids safe. And that if that means that I have to wait for the library for a few more weeks or so on and so forth, then that's what I'm going to do.
And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying that we're going to go from 0 to 60 really quickly, but for example, my nephew started summer school in class yesterday, and it's in groups of 10. And I'm, for the sake of employees and the citizens, I wouldn't want to go mass, all of a sudden you're opening the doors to mass groups. But we still have, all city buildings are closed. And some of them don't need to be opened, maybe. But for example, like a summer program, say groups of 10 or whatever would be a gradual start. Because also people are going to have to ease into it and feel comfortable. So not everyone's going to respond, kind of like the governor did with the gradual opening, first 25%, then 50%, and things like that. Same, I wouldn't want to overwhelm staff all of a sudden by saying, oh yeah, it's a free-for-all and anyone can get it and go in. But I feel like we're taking way too long, especially for some even things that don't have to involve physical contact. For example, the planning and zoning meetings, or I've gotten a number of calls from people who are saying that they can't get in touch with anyone at planning and zoning because no one's answering the phone calls. Something just to alleviate it, and so that things are moving forward.
Commissioner, just a quick note, we can promise you we'll do our due diligence and look into some type of hybrid program. As far as the library or the parks, we can maybe give you some proposals and see what fits best, something that's outdoor, that's low number. Again, it's something that has to be discussed internally first.
I would say with regard to the planning and zoning meeting, it is scheduled for the 18th and Board of Adjustment for June 24th. We are on schedule for the code rewrite. We will be hosting, you'll be receiving an email this week regarding the subcommittees, bringing them back virtually at the end of this month. So I do say we are on time and on schedule with the codes. We are also drafting a sidewalk ordinance because they were kind of all over the place, and so we wanted to ensure that that our sidewalk ordinance are enforced. With that, so we do have quite a slew of codes that you'll see that in your July meeting. The first meeting will go through P&Z with some zone changes, and immediately after that, on your July 7th and July 21st meeting, you'll be looking at new ordinances coming through. And in addition, by then you would have already had the second phase of the subcommittee meetings. We're also looking at the TERS number 3 first board meeting, which will be an introduction to our redevelopment and preliminary plan for the tax increment reinvestment zone that was passed. And also much of our efforts, in particular the health department, has been focused on our businesses such as the bingo reopening that's been allowed through the governor GA's order 23. The flea market, also talking to the families and helping them identify a create a recovery plan. The circus that is now allowed through GA23 and is to open, I believe at 50% occupancy, and getting them, we're reviewing a lot of their recovery plans and reopening plans. And so what we're doing is assisting many of those businesses they're asking us for our assistance in helping them safely reopen and reestablish business. The COVID-19 TSC disinfectant certificate, the health department took an active role with TSC on creating that program, and they were even able to receive grant funding for up to 3 employees per business. And we are also recently in partnership with BCIC received funding for an e-commerce. A lot of businesses still do cash, some do cash only, and so helping them also reopen as we're encouraging that in a safe manner. And also we found funding in order to fund up to 2 employees for the e-commerce course. So I would say it's a bit of, we are really want to identify what we can open. The planning department will be opening, it has been operating outside in terms of accepting plans externally in the parking area, is also working at reconverting a space into a permanent drive-through site in order to be more customer service. We have had some glitches in the phone system. You are correct, Commissioner Galanzi, but we've fixed those. And so definitely, and as Mr. Garza mentioned, we have had very old equipment, old plotters that were maybe even 20 years old that that had to be repurposed. Actually, those can't be repurposed anymore. Pretty much new ones purchased, and also getting our P&Z staff, some of our board members need new iPads and new equipment that they've never needed before. And so it's all of these new needs. And you know what, and we've come to the determination if Dell can't provide it, we will go to another provider, because sometimes we're asking up to 15, 20 iPads. And if we've come to if they can't provide it, we'll go to another vendor. And so, and sometimes it's the equipment, I would say, everyone wants that same equipment, but we understand that if they can't provide it, we're going to have to find an alternative provider in order to continue with the progress of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That's a good explanation, or at least it puts it into a framework. The other thing I would like, because I know that some other of the city boards have only just recently started meeting back up. Is there any way that we can encourage those boards, or even the task force, like the environmental task force, oh my God, I forgot, the charter review committee, encourage them to maybe start meeting on their own? Heck, I'll even send out an email if.
Actually, Commissioner, I'm already on that for the charter review and ethics. I already asked for those meetings, and they're going to take place, I believe, next week.
Yes.
Okay.
That's reason.
And the environmental one would be good too, especially now that the pandemic has had an impact on the environment. So.
But I agree with Commissioner Galansky on the planning part, and I've been talking to Helen and Noel about this for a while. We need to get moving on the planning. Some of the fact that it wasn't meeting was really upsetting to me. So I think that's kind of gotten kicked off the rails and moving forward. So let's continue to do that and not lose any momentum. We had a lot of momentum before this, and I expect that that's going to continue. I know that this is something that's never happened in our lifetimes, and we're trying to just make the best of it. But that doesn't mean things stop. So let's just keep moving as best we can, please.
Yeah, and one of the things, Mayor, that you'll see in the fiscal 21 budget, last year, you may recall, we funded a light to medium fleet program because that was an area that we had a lot of deferred maintenance. What we wanted to do last year that we didn't have a chance to fund was we're creating a technology replacement schedule as well, a 5 to 7 year schedule that can flex for hardware and software, and then we're going to start to fund that. So we'll also be able to do that this current upcoming budget. And Commissioner Galansky, the subcommittees, Helen did send out some emails. We're going to start discussing the reopening plan side by side with the commission so that we can have, again, as soon as the 16th, we could already have a hybrid, to Joel's point, program that we could implement. So we've been prepared to execute this plan any day after today when we wanted to first share the framework and what was some additional feedback that we're going to seek.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. I'm sorry. So, can you tell me what's currently going on with the animal shelter and what plans you have for that and what's happening to the animals?
Dr. Art, are you on the line?
I am, Commissioner. Good evening. Could you ask the question again? There was a lot of background noise.
Sure. If you could tell me what's going on with the animal shelter. Is it open? When will it be opening? And what's happening to the animals if it's not open?
Very good question. Thank you for asking. We never closed the shelter. We changed the way we were doing visiting. We actually designated parking spaces and took people in by appointments. We've continued to do the appointments. Our adoption numbers have continued to be really good, and we really have segued and pivoted a lot to social media. In fact, social media has been our primary vehicle for telling people about our current adoptions. And in addition, we've had some opportunities to reach out to our rescues. We had a rescue come out of San Antonio 2 weeks ago and take 15 animals to the East Coast. And we had another large adopter group come in as well. And just by using social media, we were just able to put out on social media. We had a dog that was brought in, run over, and we were able to get it to medical care through our rescue groups. So if anything, COVID has really pivoted the animal shelter to use the social media vehicle. And Norma Cabrera has really been a champion of that. I got to give her all the credit. And in addition, during this time, we've been able to upgrade the animal shelter with the AC units, the internal services. We've upgraded the facility. We've done a lot of modifications internally at the facility. But at no time did we close the shelter to the public for adoptions. And actually, you can drive up and adopt a pet now. We will take it out to you to your vehicle. So thank you for asking. It allows us to highlight some of the moves we've made out there. Thank you.
That's exciting. Maybe we could do some social media and just outreach to let people know that they don't have to be lonely these days. There are plenty of pets available that they can just go and pick up in a drive-through.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I believe it would be a good idea to show the public all the improvements we've made at the animal shelter. I know the HPAC was something that had been, not working for years. We're not really working at its 100% for a long time. We replaced it. It was difficult to replace, and just the fresh coat of paint and the adoption rooms, they're just a lot brighter and happier, and just, even we do a sneak peek we're going to be fully open soon to come in, but sneak peek at what we've done thus far. That's a good way to engage the public, as Commissioner Tetreault has stated.
Commissioner, I want to add, we also added a new program, a fostering program, and we continued to doing fostering. We began in mid-April, as soon as we were able to get those moving parts together. So we've had a fostering program in place at this time, and I don't have right now we have 7, I'm being given the numbers. We have 7 animals in foster at this time.
Well, I'll take one too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, and it was
doesn't come running in the room and turn my computer off.
and I want to add, it was because we knew people would get lonely during the shelter in place. So we saw this as an opportunity to increase our sheltering, and just like we had the You Walk Your Dog in the Park program, we felt this was also a new program to let people, especially through the mental health stress that and pets bring a lot of relief. That's why we began the fostering program. So thank you for asking.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you. That's all I had. Any other questions?
I have a quick question, and this is for Art as well. I was fortunate to host a Facebook Live event today for BTX Cares on the new sanitation and cleaning program that TSC is offering, basically certifying people to be able to clean in this COVID environment and do it effectively. So I think my question is, are we getting our cleaning staff certified? Because obviously we want to be able to minimize the risk for our employees and our anyone that goes to our facilities in the future.
Yes, Commissioner, great observation. We did discuss that in our leadership meeting today, and we are getting a list of our employees. There's some key employees that would need to be take that course, and so right now that's what we're working on, because there is interest from different departments, from parks departments to courts, internal services, to many departments that clean and disinfect our city facilities.
Great, thank you.
So my phone just went off with a whole bunch of texts. How can people become fosters for the animals at the shelter? Can somebody give us that info?
Yes, I will begin by giving a number, but we can also post that on our website and social media, and I'll share it after this, after the commission meeting. But we certainly want people to call us at the animal shelter. The number is 544-7351. 544-7351. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, you're not just gonna get one dog, you're gonna get two. At least.
That's what happened the first time we adopted. They were brothers, so we had to take both of them.
We'll amend the ordinance so you can have more than what's allowed.
Wonderful. It's gonna vote for you.
Any other questions?
Mayor, I just want to add, we had 10 adoptions today.
Oh,
wow, today. That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Lupe Granado for the financial update.
Slide, please. Good evening. We have total expenditures, COVID-19 expenditures of $6.3 million. Of that, 3.9 is related to budget expenditures. Non-budget expenditures, about $2.4 million. It's separated into 4 categories listed on there. Next page, please. These are the different categories on here: the personnel, supplies, leasing, contracts, other miscellaneous services. Total of $6,093,000. There's a detailed detailed vendor report on these if anybody's interested. It was generated and forwarded over to Mayor and Commissioner that requested it. If anybody's interested in, we could provide that information also. Next slide, please. Personnel breakdown. You have personnel breakdown between police, fire, and other departments. Total personnel costs is about $5.9 million. Next slide, please. On the personnel cost, request was to itemize the different costs by departments. The top 10 department expenditures are listed on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side are all the other departments that have incurred overtime related to the COVID expenses. Next page, please. Emergency procurement continued the same 2 items that we have undertaken on emergency procurement. There has been no changes on PPA requests, same ones. As far as the emergency procurement of it, and the other one is drive-through collection testing, broken up into 2 items, which is medical staff. Total cost of about $81,000, and testing kits for uninsured tests of $142,000. And this is through May 29th. Concludes the presentation. Have any questions?
Thanks, Lupe.
Next, we have Dr. Rodriguez for the drive-through collection testing site update.
Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. I wanted to give you an update on our COVID-19 drive-through testing site. Our running totals are, as of May 28, 2020, To date, we've had 2,759 tests administered at the drive-through. We also had 2,109 individuals that did not meet criteria. As I explained, we continue trending a 50% insured to a 50% uninsured rate. Our total numbers reported to Cameron County are as follows: 164 positive, 2,363 negative results. And right now, we have in the queue 235 results. I do want to update you on that. We followed up on the waiting time for CPNL. The waiting time has actually decreased. We're trending back down to less than 4 days. It had gone up to plus of 5 days, but the hump on the nursing homes, I believe now that they've tested this past week, CPNL Labs is getting caught up again on that side of the house. Next slide, please. The drive-through testing, you've seen some of these slides previously, and the numbers haven't changed. We continue to trend the same, and really the swab-only positivity rate hasn't changed. We continue at the 7.1%. Next slide. And these next slides have not changed either. I just left them here for the reason that when we go into the graphs in a little bit, in case there's some questions, I wanted to bring these back to reference. Next slide. And next slide. One more. So one more slide. So one question that we were asked previously was if we could show a comparison about Texas, Cameron County, and Brownsville. That's what's new and different from this slide. I will allow now let Ms. Jones to present on this. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So this right here is going to be our cumulative cases, deaths, and then the estimated recovered that Texas is reporting. We color coordinated it this way, so that way you could see kind of like more of that curve that we keep hearing spoken about, and it really delineates from, makes that delineation between those different variables that we're looking at. And then if we go to Cameron County, which is, or the next slide, sorry. And this one right here is Cameron County. And as you can see, we can see the little blip at the beginning when we started seeing some of those nursing home cases. And we're seeing the same thing. The colors all are representing the same information, cases, deaths, and the recovered. And the next slide. And this is where we are at Brownsville. And with this slide, you can also see when each reopening or executive order is coming into effect. You can kind of see little blips of increases along the way. And our deaths, our cumulative deaths are actually really small. So there is a little bit of a yellow line, but it's not very pronounced as it is in the Texas and in particular Cameron County. Next slide. And this slide right here is that 7-day moving average. And as you can see, we've actually crossed the 10 cases line. So just keep that in mind. We're kind of bouncing around just a little bit, but we are increasing steadily as each new executive order goes in and each new phase is opening. We do see those little bumps, and they're kind of trying to work their way out. Next slide. And as you can see, since we have begun the different reopening, we are seeing those bumps in the community spread. And just as a reminder, the community spread is where we don't know where they've acquired the virus, whether we don't know the place, we don't know the time, and we don't know if there was a person involved directly. So that's where we want to continually monitor closely. Not that the others aren't important, but that one is when we start getting much more community spread, and that's where we begin to worry a little bit more, just for the simple fact that one is very difficult to contain. So that's why we always include that one. And as you can see, that is beginning to increase some. And next slide. And this is the confirmed deaths and cases based on the different age categories. And we did have that additional death, which affected the 60 to 69 age category. So you'll see it's real small, but we did register one of those. But all the others are still in the 80 and above age group. And next slide. All right, and then Dr. Rodriguez.
So on the boots on the ground, we continue day 28 citywide operations. I want to add that we focus our activities based on what Dr. McCormick is sharing with us on the data. Currently, we continue on the surrounding area of downtown. We've shifted a little bit to the outer perimeter of what I would call the downtown area on the west side of town and on right around the southern area of the downtown Brownsville. To date, we've been able to reach 17,865 households. That represents about 35% of Brownsville households. And we continue the same number of staff. This is important because with the latest rains, we have had some delays in our ability to have our boots on the grounds, and we're shifting some of our operations as well to mosquito spraying and vector control as needed. So while we are at day 28, we're counterbalancing this activity, and we've had some rain out days, but we're keeping busy. If we're not doing this, we're shifting to vector control on those days. Next slide. So in the COVID drive-through update, there is a health committee through the recovery plan that we will be working through for the next phase of testing, phase 2. We continue to monitor May 22nd and the next changes on a phase 2, how it will impact our measures. And we look at this on a 2-week folding. We look at our doubling rate closely to see how many days it takes to take a case and double that amount over how many days. And then we look very closely at what the community spread at any one time is. When you take those and we counter that with who's being tested at the drive-through, and we continue that the drive-through continues to bring some uninsured where we stand at 50%, it does tell us that we're reaching a good number of people out in the community, and our numbers continue to be what they've been trending. For example, at day 49, the drive-through, we've had 28 patients tested on June 1st. The breakdown was 14 insured, 14 uninsured, and we've tested 2,826 to date. But the important part here is that the drive-through continues to give us that data that Dr. McCormick referenced, and we continue to use that as we built the vulnerability index map. Next slide. So I want to take you to this image here. This is an incident status report. If you look at the tabs down below to your bottom left, below the confirmed cases, there are tabs that read daily case count, case by age group, and so forth. Many of the slides that we've been presenting to you will be going online in this format. And then above where the map is, the map itself will also have tabs where a lot of Dr. McCormick's presentations that he revealed tonight will be viewable. So the map that you see there is just a sample, but there will be tabs to be able to look at the data that Dr. McCormick shared with us, and this will be shared with the public. In addition, the boxes that say total population and seniors over 65, those tabs can be modified. So as we start with a very basic ICE incident status report for the public to see, we will continue to amend and append to it to make it a more robust app for the community to be able to use out there during the COVID pandemic. This concludes my presentation. We want to thank you in the Health Department for your ongoing support. Any questions?
Dr. Rodriguez, I do want to go back to one slide showing the different age groups for positive cases. I think it's about 3 slides back. That one right there. That one, yeah. I do want to show, and I want people to see, the highest group here is 20 to 29. That we've had the most cases in that age group, which is concerning. Between 20 and really between 20 and 39, we've had a really high amount of cases. We're almost opposite of what we understood this virus to be early on, which was that it would affect individuals with chronic illnesses and individuals that were older. We've seen that on the mortalities, but it's important to show that individuals that are between 20 and 29 and 30 and 39 are the highest group getting infected. So nobody is immune to this, obviously, and we've seen a lot of mobility and a lot of traffic from those age groups. So I just want them to be cautious when they're out there.
Yeah. And Mayor, if I can add, Brownsville is very fortunate that it's a very young city. And when you look at our demographics, when you break them down by population, our median age is right in the late mid-20s. So it is natural to have them at a higher number because they make almost half of our population in this area. But it's also important to note that they are just as at much risk to get COVID as anyone else. The outcome of the disease is what we were looking at, and as mentioned earlier by a commissioner asking about the hospitalization rate, it's translating this data into how many of these age groups will end up needing hospitalization. And as we hear weekly, and as Art Garza and Leslie Bingham told us, there's been an uptick in hospitalizations, but we've seen a pattern where they're at 50% of their capacity, and then we'll come back and have a meeting with them, and all 50% of their vents will be in use. Keep in mind, most of those individuals on the vents are the older age groups. The people who are in their 20s, they are giving COVID. What we would like for them to do is to be cognizant that they're probably carriers and super spreaders. And I think that's the takeaway that I would like for any audience members out there. This COVID affects all of us. It's not, but we're putting most at risk our parents, our fathers, our grandparents, by not being proactive and remaining at home wherever possible or wearing a mask in public. And I think that's the takeaway that you were talking about, that these young people may be spreading out COVID and they're going to test positive. But somewhere in the future, we should see this translate into potentially antibodies and be able to start that herd immunity side. I want to take also an opportunity to expand a little bit on the 70 and 80-year-olds. We continue to monitor the nursing homes, and we have talked to our regional director from the state. They will be getting the results very, very soon. We have initiated conversations. We sent an email earlier this week to the state that we really want to be kept informed on those results. And I know the Spanish Meadows does have a hospice patient that did convert to positive and one additional employee. So we continue to monitor that situation there, and the state is also keeping us abreast of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Art.
Mayor, I want to add, you asked me a question this morning at the hospital group about testing of employees. I did send some correspondence on the criteria. They're following the CDC criteria. The state itself has not imposed restrictions. They're recommending that they follow the CDC criteria, which we shared, and we've asked the state if it's possible through their state agencies to update a memo requiring nursing homes to test their employees on a more frequent basis.
Right, that's going to be beneficial. And to that end, I think the city also needs to develop a testing program for its employees too, while we're at it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
No, just thank you. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Next, we have presentation number 2 under work session, presentation on taxi ordinance chapter 106, vehicles for hire, by the Brownsville Police Department.
Mayor and City Commission, back in October 2019, we had a commission work session regarding taxi ordinance and operations. During the session, the commission suggested the exploration of the use of more technology and less restrictive ordinance regulations. We've been sidetracked with some other projects, and of course, everything went on pause due to the pandemic. We're back on track with the project and seeking commission input during this work session. Chief Salceda directed us to take a phased approach in updating the taxi ordinance. We worked with legal on the First Amendment, and it will be presented in the public hearing on tonight's meeting. The ordinance revision allows for taxis to solicit businesses. Simply put, the cabs can now actually be in the areas of restaurants and bars. The change in the ordinance should promote more usage of taxis in our city and also provide a more even playing field with the advent of ride sharing. The other two sections of tonight's amendment ordinance repeal the number of permits and as well as the number of taxi companies allowed to operate within the city. This is just old language and it needs to be removed. suggested reducing the licensing costs or extending the licensing of the cabs from annual to every 2 years. We have another meeting set this month to discuss what the next phase of ordinance changes should include. The discussion during the first meeting was very candid. Everything was on the table. It was clear to everyone in the meeting that there were going to have to be some major changes to adapt, compete in this new era. On the next meeting, we will cover revisions of fares and plaza district or operations as relates to taxi stands. For this work session, we want commission input on the project. First, are we heading in the right direction? And two, what other areas would you like us to cover as making changes to the ordinance?
Really, Commander, what I was interested in was bringing it back into something that's more modern, eliminating some of the issues that we had with the ordinance. It hadn't been looked at in a while, and looking at incorporating ride shares as that's quickly becoming a larger part of the market, making sure the taxi companies complied with regulations and were safe and had equal or at least fair fares that were even across the board and competitive with ride shares, and make sure that ride shares also got equal treatment and weren't given any sort of preference over taxis or anything like that. I just wanted a fair, modern, up-to-date ordinance. But it looks like you're on the right track.
Yeah, we're working towards that. I think during the meeting, we all agreed that what our ordinance is going to shape up to be is more, it's really turning in, it's going to really transform the ordinance. And it'd be more like a rideshare model with some more ordinance behind it.
I think it's looking good so far. Thanks.
I think it's great, and I think the taxi drivers really appreciate it.
It was great the first meeting, and we're looking forward to the next meeting and really getting into the teeth of it. And obviously, they want to become part of the decision-making process. It's new to them. They're small business men and women. So, I mean, the apps, we're going to be working with the apps and getting them all on a single app, talking about geofencing, advertisement, stuff like that. And we're excited.
That's great. Thank you.
I think it's going to be similar to some of the issues you faced when you were doing the tow trucks. You had some companies, smaller companies that maybe at first didn't really understand how they needed to adapt, but at the end, I think they all understood, and it seems like it's been better and more streamlined. So hopefully, we accomplish the same thing with the taxes.
Yes, sir.
There is an item later, Commander, on this. I assume it's not ready for action, from what I understand. Correct?
No, it's ready for action. Actually, we covered it. It's just a phase. The chief had us phase in approach. What do we need to do first? And the thing was to repeal 3 items. And like I said, the one allows for taxis to solicit. That's a big item for them. They're real excited about that, and they want to get that passed. And the other 2 sections are just removing some old language.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Next, we have a consent agenda item.
I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda. It's Nuri.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Galansky. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Dr. Gowan. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next, we have our public hearings. Public hearing number 1, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2020-318-LL, amending the City of Brownsville Code of Ordinances, repealing and replacing in their entirety Chapter 106, Article 2, Sections 106 to 107, 106 to 108, and 106-38.
Mayor, City Commission, this agenda item is a public hearing pursuant to Chapter 106 of the City Ordinances. This amendment removes 3 sections of the chapter. First, Section 106-38 is removed and allows taxi cabs to solicit businesses within the city. Second, Section 106-107 removes restrictions on the number of taxi permits allowed. And third, Section 106-108 removes the limitation on the number of taxi companies allowed. This is a public hearing.
This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here on this item?
Am I using the wrong agenda?
So they're gonna give you your helpful for business development and
Mayor, I unmuted everybody. I did not hear any comments.
I'll make the motion to close public hearing.
Second.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Oops, thank you. I can hear myself just fine. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
I'll
Looking
move.
for- Go ahead. We have a motion to approve?
Yes, I'll make it the first.
Okay, we have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Commander.
Next, we have a public hearing number 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2019-068 to rezone from dwelling G to apartment G for lot 26, block 1, St. Tropez subdivision, Cameron County, Texas, located at 2521 Old Port Isabel Road.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. So as this property, if you recall, it was tabled back, or it was presented back in January, and it was tabled, to be exact, on January 21st. The applicant is requesting to upzone from a residential zoning to an apartment zoning. This property has 0.72 acres, and the proposed use is apartments, and it is fronting Old Port Isabel Road. Next slide. This is the aerial view of the property. There is single-family dwelling to the west. There is also commercial business and single-family to the north, and some vacant land to the east. Next slide, please. The predominant zoning in the area is residential. There is also commercial and multifamily. Next slide. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 18 mailouts and 0 written opposition. Next slide. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan. P&Z does support the staff's recommendation to rezone from dwelling to apartment.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Oh, is that it, or are you still presenting?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is anybody here on this item?
She knows how to get on, like, to that somebody. They have like a little office, stuff in there, and
The public hearing, please, so we can unmute you.
Motion to close public hearing?
Sorry, I was talking. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I think whenever they go to the waiting room, it mutes all of us. I'm sorry. So I would ask the commission if we could impose a buffer between the apartments and the neighborhood behind. What is the current restriction, or what is the current request? What is the current allotment? We're on mute, remember. We have to unmute.
You're asking if there's a current restriction on buffer?
The buffer in the back. What is the current requirement?
There isn't really a requirement from the code, from the building code perspective. There is a privacy fence requirement, but it could be something that we can ask for.
Okay, so I would like to ask for that just because it's apartments backing onto a neighborhood, that a buffer be included.
And just to clarify, Commissioner, would it be a vegetation buffer, one particular width?
Yeah, I would recommend, Commissioner Tetro, if you like some sort of vegetation, shrubbery, trees, that can, and maybe it be more than 5 feet, maybe 10 feet.
If we could do 10 feet of some type of vegetation or trees, shrubs. Yeah.
Okay. Will do.
For the privacy and the sake of it feeling like a neighborhood. On the other side. So I'll make the motion to approve.
Well, we need to close the public hearing first, Commissioner.
Sorry, you're right.
We had a motion and a second already, so those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, would you like to make your motion now, Commissioner?
I'll make the motion with the restriction in place.
Okay.
Second.
We have a
Question.
motion.
No question, sorry.
Okay. We have a motion, so this will be discussion.
Okay. Can none of the parties involved are requesting for that? So then can we as a city commission go in and request for that additionally?
Yes, you do have the authority to request conditions.
Right.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Commissioner Galansky is a nay. The motion passes. Next item. Thank you.
Thank you.
And another remedy is if there's any issues with the applicant and the buffer, then you'll let us know. We'll hear back about it, correct?
Yes, we will keep you up to date if we have any feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have items for individual consideration. Number 1, consideration and action to approve Sixth Amendment declaration of local state disaster for public health emergency.
I believe I could start if you'd like, Mayor.
Yes, please.
The Sixth Amended Declaration is more of a cleanup of the Fifth Amended Declaration. It does not include additional measures. What it does is eliminate, for example, the dates. Some of these new measures are effective on May 22nd. Therefore, the reference to restaurants being increased to 50% on May 22nd was deleted. It just states that they can occupy at 50%. Similar to bars, bars were identified as being reopened on May 22nd. That date was eliminated and there was only reference to the 25%. Same thing with bingo halls and bowling alleys. There was a reference to May 22nd and that was stricken, and it still allows, of course, with 25%, but they must at least ensure 6 feet of social distancing between operating lanes. That still remains, and all the requirements and protocols on the DSHS website is also required. There were 4 bullet points with regard to childcare, adult daycare, plasma centers, and that was also stricken in speaking with Dr. Rodriguez, Texas Health and Human Services, and in addition to each respective applicable state licensing regulatory agency has identified more guidance with respect to reopening of child care centers, adult daycare centers, nursing centers, plasma centers, and other similar facilities. Everything is mostly highly recommended and remains as is. Any references to city facilities that can become reopened prior to the next city commission meeting can also be incorporated in by special meeting if that is how the mayor and the commission wishes to proceed. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next, we have action item number 2, consideration and action to approve on second reading the city's general franchise ordinance 2020-1667 as amended to be added as chapter 309 of the Brownsville Code of Ordinances.
Honorable Mayor, City Commissioners, this item had previously been covered under executive session with attorney. This is a second reading, and in summary, this allows the city to go forward in contracting, go through the process of contracting with a vendor to provide residential solid waste collections.
Okay, very good. Anybody have any questions on this? Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
You know what? I'm sorry. I want to rescind my motion and I'm going to abstain.
Very good, Commissioner. Looking for a motion then.
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
City
Those opposed?
Secretary, please note that I'm abstaining.
Commissioner Gowan, you're in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. And please note that Commissioner Tetro abstained. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have action item number 3, consideration and action to acknowledge receipt of the Texas Federal Lands Access Program grant of $500,000 and authorizing local match requirement for Bahia Grande Trail feasibility study.
Good evening. We have for you some great news. We were awarded the Federal Land Access Program grant of $500,000. This will allow us to conduct a feasibility study for the Bahia Grande, which is a 21.5 miles, a multi-use trail. I know staff has been working diligently for this, specifically Ramiro Gonzalez and Eva Garcia and others. And so this is a great win for the city. And I know Mr. Ramiro Gonzalez is on the call too.
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioners, it's pretty straightforward. This is a highly competitive grant that we were able to get. The local match is $100,000. And that is actually coming from savings from the Battlefield Trail extension. So if you remember, you approved $1 million contract to build the Battlefield Trail extension. Our budget was about 1.4. So we feel confident that there's not going to be a tremendous amount of change orders, if any. So we're going to use the additional money. We're going to take the $100,000 from that pot of money to match. So this is it has no effect to the general fund, and this is just leveraging more money, more grant money on top of grant money, which is what we want to see. We ask for your approval tonight.
Well, that's the ideal situation. Grant money on grant money. So thank you, everybody that worked on this project.
I'll make the motion to approve.
A motion to approve? Have a second?
Second. I couldn't get unmuted.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have action item number 4, consideration and action to approve an interlocal agreement between the City of Brownsville and the Brownsville Independent School District authorizing construction, operation, and maintenance for Southmost Nature Trails Phase 2 on land adjacent to Garza Elementary School.
So Mayor and City Commission, we have an interlocal agreement for the Southmost Nature Trail Phase 2. During the last meeting, I know we had the AFA item in that meeting. It was tabled, but we do have the interlocal agreement ready for your approval. It does outline what areas adjacent to Garza Elementary will be used for this trail. BISD Board of Trustees did approve it back in March, and so we request your approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have action item number 5, consideration and action for the City Commission to adopt resolution number 2020-049, approving the Texas Department of Transportation sponsored Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and establishing safety performance targets for Brownsville Metro.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. The Public Transportation Agency Plan has been developed by TxDOT on behalf of the City of Brownsville and Brownsville Metro in accordance with the requirements stated in 49 CFR Part 673 to ensure compliance with MAP 21 and the FAST Act, in which FTA promulgated on August 11, 2016, the adoption of a safety management system for all public transportation agencies in the United States. B-Metro staff has been an active participant in the development of this plan through sharing existing documents and participating in communication and coordination throughout the development of this plan. Through this plan, B-Metro is establishing the necessary authority, accountabilities, and responsibilities for the management of the safety management systems. While safety has always been a primary function at B-Metro, this plan lays out the process to fully implement its safety program over the next several years that complies with the requirements of MAP 21 and FAST Act. Brownsville Metro staff recommends approval of this plan and requests adoption through Resolution 2020-49.
Okay, looking for motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion. You want a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Action item number 6, consideration and action to enter into an agreement for services provided by Teleton and telecommunications management consulting firm EFT-USA Interlocal Purchasing System.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Roxana Moreno. I am the Internal Service Director. I'm here to present this agenda item for consideration and action to enter into an agreement with Televon, a telecommunications management consulting firm. This proposal is where Televon will evaluate and analyze and propose solution for our enterprise-wide systems services. They will evaluate our providers, plans, service quality, our usage, and see where we're having issues. They will review our billing. They'll ensure that we're obtaining the accurate pricing and ensure that we're receiving the right discounts and the right plan. Any billing errors will also be resolved on our behalf. The plan is going to be in phases. We're going to start off with wireless to assess how well they do and have a better understanding of their process and gauge the level of savings. And then with the last 3 wireless bills, that's how they will begin. After evaluating the services, and we'll proceed to other areas such as long distance services, data, and internet services. Televon will be paid a fee in the amount of 45% of actual estimated savings calculated over an optimization period. The fee is earned at the time of the implementation of the organizational change recommended by Televon. After the expiration, it will drop to 0%. Therefore, there is no upfront cost, and the city would earn 55% of realized savings for 2 years, and after that, it'll be 100%. We would not have to appropriate any funds for this service. It is recommended that we establish this partnership with Televon.
And this fee, is it a customary fee, 45%?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Do you have any motions?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have executive session. Closed session pursuant to section 551.0871 Texas Government Code regarding commercial or financial information for the city of Brownsville has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city, and with which the city is conducting economic development negotiations, and to deliberate financial or other incentives to the same regarding Project Stone.
I'll move
Motion to move to executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move to executive session. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we're now in executive session.
back from executive session. We still have a quorum present. I see Commissioner Cowan, Commissioner Galunski, Commissioner, Mayor Mendez, and
Commissioner Gowan?
I don't see, give me 1 minute. I don't see Commissioner Gowan, sir. Commissioner Galunski is on here. There's 4 of you on here.
Okay, well, all we're doing is adjourning, so let's go ahead.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second. Commissioner Galunski, you're muted.
Don't we have to say that there's no action based on conversations from executive session?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All
So
right.
I'll say that we're taking no action on.
All right, thank you. There will be no action on executive session items like Commissioner Galunski so finally reminded me. So we did have a motion to adjourn in a second. Any discussion on that? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. See you soon.
End of the meeting. Thank you.